talking to Dr. Paul Rosenblatt from the University of Minnesota in the Department of Family Social Science. Paul is a distinguished professor here at the university. He has a career of over 40 years in family sciences, in family social science. And I'm fortunate enough to have spent the last 2 years at the University of Minnesota and gotten to know Paul a little bit, but I really wanted to invite you to be interviewed today. Paul has also announced his retirement, and we had a retirement party here about just a little less than a month ago, and it was a great accomplishment. And Paul has been a good example for me as someone who is interested in retiring in a way that keeps him active and continuing his work. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Paul, the reason, and I mentioned a little bit of this earlier, but the reason I thought it would be great to have you interview in this series would be because you have seen a lot of marriage and family therapy doctoral students, and you have taught and written about and done research on qualitative research methods. A lot of your research, the preponderance of your research is qualitative research method, is from a qualitative tradition. And you've written books about how to do qualitative research methods, and you've worked with a lot of our the department's marriage and family therapy track students. So, I guess if I could ask you, the first thing I'd ask would be, what do you see as, or maybe let me back up a little bit. Maybe why do MFT students get attracted to qualitative research methods, in your opinion?
I think part of it is numbers aren't so real for many MFT students.
Okay.
We have very bright MFT students. For decades we've been getting really able people, but I think numbers are not particularly real for them.
What do you mean they're not real?
That they're not words, they're not emotions. The numbers are disconnected.
They don't speak to them.
Yeah, the numbers are connected to measures, and the measures themselves don't even necessarily speak to them. So, in defense of our MFT students, we've had MFT students who said, I can't stand quantitative work, I can't do it, I don't know how to do it. And then they've got at the very top scores in their stats classes, so that they can pull it off. And we require students to do quantitative as well as qualitative work in this department.
Right.
But for a lot of our MFT students, possibly even all, no, I can think of a couple of exceptions. The qualitative work makes more sense.
Speaks to them, makes more sense. Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't necessarily mean they're automatically good at all stages of qualitative. And part of it is a lot of our MFT students are really still kind of beginners in MFT when they arrive. I mean, they've only had sometimes just a handful of clinical hours, and often even a few hundred clinical hours is still not a lot in terms of experiencing of people's emotions and learning how to use themselves and learning how to be comfortable with things that are strange and so on.
So when you hear MFT students in class talk about their affinity toward qualitative, or I don't know if that's an affinity toward qualitative or a repulsion against the quantitative measures and research methods, do they talk about the similarities between qualitative research and what they find themselves doing, or what their passion is with their own clinical work?
Well, when I teach qualitative courses, maybe half the students are MFT students, and we talk about the similarities and the challenges relating MFT to qualitative work. And one of the challenges for MFT people is not to intervene. It's really hard to just listen to people, listen to an individual, or listen to a couple, or listen to a family, and not offer them the obvious reframe, or not point out the ways they're going by each other, or not to offer them a more constructive way to argue with each other.
So are they always trying to get more therapeutic than
not always,
being asked to be? Or?
But a lot of people, a lot of MFT students know how to do things and find it hard not to. And I'm not a therapist, and I too at times find it hard not to offer some kind of therapeutic help. I'm practicing without a license then, but sometimes I can see where, gee, this person would be a lot better off if I just offered this reframe, and I don't do it. But I keep being finding myself being pushed to do it. So I think that's one of the things that's hard for MFT students, to draw the line between doing MFT and doing qualitative interviewing. And particularly if the topic is one that might show up in an MFT's office. You know, here's a couple who's had a child die. I did research on that, and that's a hard topic for MFT students to just leave alone when there's obvious pain there, an obvious couple of difficulties that they might be helped with, and especially here's a couple who hasn't gone to therapy and doesn't seem likely to go to therapy. It's I don't know if there's research on MFTs out in their everyday life. I mean, if you're in a shopping mall or you're in a religious congregation and something comes by you that looks like it could use some help, can you resist offering help?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Maybe someone's dissertation out there.
Right.
Yeah, I know that for me personally, when I see those things going, like I'll be in a shopping store, I don't tend to intervene. Like if I see someone being harsh with their children, and I know certainly there are different ways to be a parent. But yeah, so I can imagine being in that intimate space where you're interviewing somebody and you're talking about the passing of a child or the trauma that had been experienced, that these MFT students would want to reach out and do something. Have you ever received or looked back at transcripts and gone over like transcripts generated from an MFT student's interviews and said, "These you're being too therapeutic here"?
Yeah.
You have to. Do you throw that out? Do you?
Well, I've had 10 MFT students as research assistants who did interviewing, and I listened to every interview. They're all audio tapes. I listen to all the audio tapes, and I'll comment if they've done something like an intervention. I won't throw the thing out, unless I suppose if they're feeding words to people, that might make me want to throw out that segment of the interview. But that's never really happened. I've had really good MFT research assistants. I mean, just mostly superb interviewers. But not intervening is one of the things they have to learn early, and so we really discuss the early interviews that they do, and I go over the tape in detail with them. And another issue is I don't know if this is so much an issue nowadays for MFT. Maybe it still is, but a lot of people want to talk about the history of things, how they met, how this child was born, and what happened in our lives, and then we moved here, and then we moved there. And in my qualitative interviewing, that's fine. I'm glad to have that information. And I think often in therapy, you've got a 50-minute or 45-minute session, and you want to cut to the chase, and the history really doesn't matter so much as the current realities. And so there are topics in qualitative interviewing that an MFT might be impatient with. Although I haven't really seen that in my own research assistants. Even an experienced assistant experienced MFT can be uncomfortable with pain. I mean, you're interviewing bereaved parents, or people who are losing their farm, or people who just have awful things going on in their lives.